Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
On this week's episode of Passion to Win, a series celebrating the winners of the EOY Entrepreneur of the Year 2015 awards, we get in conversation with three entrepreneurial giants from the fields of pharmaceuticals, consulting and banking and relive their success stories. Coming from a small town in Gujarat, Sameer Mehta completed an MBA and joined his father's pharmaceutical business in 1986.
While I was young, my father started out on his own, and so given the stress of starting out a new venture, what it involved, I ended up shifting places and schools. So that was the early phase of learning. I mean, essentially what it taught me was the values of being independent and the value of being adaptable. I think I completed my management graduation in 1986 and joined the business. So initial about a year was spent going through the shop floor management understanding. So I was placed at our plant, which was in Vatva, trying to understand how the production operation works. And after that, I think it was going through the different departments like accounting and procurement and sales marketing. I think that was the sort of early induction phase. Since then, I started taking greater interest in the business development and the marketing functions. So EOY was focused on developing the Russian business, which was our next big turning point around the mid-80s and early 90s. So obviously that while the business was growing by leaps and bounds, supporting the market development effort in terms of ensuring the deliveries was a big emphasis. So which is what I undertook as my own emphasis or focus.
However, Torrent would soon face a major challenge.
The Soviet Union, as it used to be known as then, which was the current Russia and Eastern European countries like Poland, Czech and Slovak, all that put together, it used to be managed through a centralized buying system, which used to work out of Moscow. So pharmaceutical companies which were desirous of selling their products had to go through the process of getting approvals and being shortlisted by the agencies which was dealing with the procurement. We went through that early phase of getting our plant registered and getting our products registered. And that business rapidly expanded for us. I mean, given the sort of close economic ties that India and Soviet Union had those days, and on the strength of the rupee-ruble trade agreement, that we could capitalize on that opportunity, and the Soviet Union business became much larger than our Indian business at that point of time. And probably in that phase of late 80s, early 90s, almost as much as 70% of our revenue used to come from that single market. So that was the early Russia success from a period 88, 89 till about 92, 93. Unfortunately, while the business in terms of scale really grew rapidly in that period and became very important for us, but that phase didn't last long. The Soviet Union went through a disintegration, and with that, virtually the business collapsed. I mean, the centralized buying system was abandoned, and so we had in the year 93, 94, we ended up losing almost 70% of our business overnight.
Today, Torrent Pharma has a market capitalization of approximately 22,500 crore rupees, with 70% of its business coming from the overseas market.
So Torrent Group today overall is about 18,500 crore revenue, and we employ probably a little over 20,000 people. I think half and half must be, say around 10,000 people must be employed in pharma and another 10,000 in power. Pharma business has been almost 70% of the business now comes from overseas, with US, Brazil and Germany being the key markets. We have 5 manufacturing plants in 4 different states of India, and our R&D center is near Ahmedabad, which is the backbone of all our research activities.
The winner, ladies and gentlemen, is Samir Mehta of Torrent Pharmaceuticals.
Born to a railway doctor, Krishna Kumar Natarajan spent his formative years in a railway colony.
It's been an interesting. I was born in a middle-class family. My father was a doctor in the railways. Grew up in a family of 2 elder sisters and me. Being in a community like railways, I think you always had the opportunity to mix around with diverse people, which I think had a lot of influence on my later life. Not only dealing with diverse people, I think the infrastructure which a typical railway colony gives enables you to build more as an individual rather than just being focused on studies.
After completing his engineering and MBA, K. Natarajan chose to join the IT industry with a job at Wipro. He learnt a lot by doing practically everything, from selling computers to getting new clients.
The choice then was to really do a job which at that time was the best thing which an MBA would do, which was either to go to a consumer product company or do a role in finance. Very consciously I went into the IT industry because in 1981 when I passed out my MBA, IT was really a very evolving industry. Not too many people felt that there'll be a lot of opportunities there. But since I felt and intuitively I felt this is an industry which is going to give a lot of opportunities to a young management graduate like me. And I also chose to go to an organization like Wipro, which at that time was just getting into the IT business. In fact, many people question saying, here is a vegetable product company getting into computers. How are you really going to make an impact there, or is the company going to become successful? In a way, I joined a startup within a traditional enterprise because the IT business was a startup within the thing. And that experience of being a part of a startup, I think taught me a lot of things. In fact, practically one did every functional role within the IT industry, starting from trying to repair computers to selling to acquiring new customers. Every aspect of the role you did, which I think was a very rounded learning. And once the company grew, I sort of graduated more into selling and became the regional profit center head of one of the smaller regions. Then the company really threw a challenge at me, saying that our northern region is probably not doing well because typically it's a lot more government business. And the traditional thinking was that a very ethical company like Wipro cannot do government business. So we really want to change it. And the region was being run by a veteran who was from IBM. So they took the risk of a youngster like me going there and sort of doing that job.
After successfully managing diverse roles at Wipro, K. Natarajan yearned to do something different.
Then an opportunity came. The whole area of electronic commerce was getting popular. Since I had done diverse roles, marketing, human resources, run a P&L, Wipro asked me to sort of drive that business. So I started that and grew that fairly rapidly to be a very different and successful business, which is when the whole itch to do something different happened. It happened in a chance meeting which Subrata and me had, where we're really talking about our life scripts and what is it we can do differently. And sometimes I think chance meetings really tend to change lives, because we really saw the opportunity to create what we thought was a next generation services company. It's not that the current job did not have challenges, but clearly we saw the opportunity to do something, an organization which is more socially conscious, which really creates wealth for people who become a part of the organization, as well as define what is really the next generation services company. That's how Mindtree was really conceptualized on 17th June 1998. The early days were clearly very defining, because your success being a senior person in a large well-known organization does not necessarily mean the same success will translate onto your new role. People who used to know me well as a professional, who trusted me as a Wipro executive, would still give time but would not directly give business, because they were really afraid of the risk of dealing with any other startup. But I think the experience was very important, because the day we launched, I also decided that I'll spend or relocate to US, because that was our major market, and somebody had to be in the market to get the first few customers. And in a way, I was displacing myself personally, being alone, at the same time trying to call on customers who many of them would reject you, but at the same time ensuring that yes, I think as a startup we need to get our first few customers and build the business brick by brick.
The services category winner is Krishna Kumar Natarajan of Mindtree.
After completing his engineering and working for a couple of banks, Romesh Sobti chanced upon a rather unusual opportunity.
When I left ABN AMRO as the CEO, and this opportunity came, which is to take over the helm of IndusInd Bank, and 5 of us together took that jump. And over the last 4.5 or 5 years, I've been asked this question many, many times by investors and analysts and things like that, on why you left. You were at the peak in a multinational bank, fat bonuses, glamorous lifestyle, and all the sort of jobs. And this was a relatively impaired sort of bank. Very few people really knew about it. So why did you take that job? And I think finally that's where the final instinct came. And it came at a very late stage of my life. That's why I keep wondering, how do 60-year-olds become entrepreneurs? When you talk entrepreneurs, you only think of youngsters, right? But I think at every stage of life, there is this opportunity. For me, this opportunity came when I was 58 years old, right? When I had the chance of coming here. The whole thing was at that stage, how do we take this bank from being what people called an outlier bank to become one of the most profitable banks in the country.
Still, Romesh and his team were determined to prove that things could change.
Turning point maybe the Lehman crisis. We came in February. We presented our business plan to the board in March, right? And we started implementing in April. And in October, the world exploded. The Lehman crisis, actually, while it created a slowdown and things like that in the economy, really gave us an impetus to do certain things and build certain features in the construct that would stay forever. What did Lehman do to banks in India? It caused a liquidity crisis, right? And that's when we imbibed that lesson and said, we will never allow this bank to get into a liquidity crisis, right? So you do certain things. What sort of liabilities do you raise? What sort of assets do you create? And the business model really started moderating or modifying a little bit. So we said, we don't have money to do long-term lending. We don't have infrastructure, therefore, we'll become a working capital bank, right? So how that filtered? That you have to work on the liability side of the balance sheet, that you want current and savings bank accounts, right? So build your products around that sort of thing, So I would say that was one turning point. And I think one large turning point also happened around that time, around October, December of 2008, when we resolved through persuasive action one of our largest bad debts. That bad debt accounted for 1/3 of our book. And suddenly, from having bad debts at 3% of our portfolio, we became 1.3% of the portfolio. And I think that changed the attitude of many players with whom we have to deal with to do banking.
Today, IndusInd Bank has a pan-India presence with more than 900 branches and 1,600 ATMs and has a CAGR of 27% in loans, 32% in revenue and 39% in profit after tax over the last 5 years. The bank has launched a variety of consumer-friendly services, including the video branch and digital initiatives like On The Go, Quick Pay and Swift Pay.
Well, in brief, we think the future is brighter than the past. That belief comes from the fact that, one, we have very strong belief in the market. It's a growing market. It's not a stagnating market. India is perhaps one of the finest banking markets in the world. We are well placed to ride that banking wave that's going to come. So that's the firm belief that this thing. The question is, how will you position yourselves to maximize the benefits of that wave? And that's why we are building. So our proposition going forward is really that we bring scale into our businesses and retain our profitability. So we have a mantra of scale with profitability. Scale in the branch network, scale in your, of course, the workforce, scale in your products and services, scale in your fees, and scale in your profit. Scale in your customer base, most importantly. So scale with profitability is really going to play out here. There are a few new developments that are happening, which today seem insignificant in terms of the revenue pool that lies in those areas. That's the area of financial inclusion, where a lot of debate and discussion has already happened. But I think models are evolving to really work into that space on a viable basis. So we see not only lending to what they call the unbankable or the poor, but it's lending products, it's savings products, it's payment products, and all those things will converge to create viability. So you talk about the bottom of the pyramid. I think the pyramid's bottom is being extended, and you have to get into that space.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating